On this section, we're going to graph linear functions. So we've already had some graphing. Now we're going to graph it in function form. And so in general, as you can see, a linear function is f of x equals mx plus b. Now remember that y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form. And so we're just writing it in that form basically, but instead of y we use the f of x. F of x can take the place of y, right? So when it does, then we have a function, but we can kind of work with it in the same way as we have been. So on this one, I need to choose some values to find my ordered pairs, right? So I'm going to choose values for x because this is already written in function notation, right? F of x equals 2x plus 6. And, you know, we can just pick easy numbers like -1, 0, and 1. Those are simple to use, and because it's just a 2x plus 6, those numbers work just fine. All right, so the x coordinates are what I'm choosing because this is a simple calculation then. 2 times -1 plus 6 will give me my f of x, or y. Remember, this can be y if you want to think of it that way. So -2 plus 6 is 4. And then I take 2 times 0 plus 6. Now on this, I'm actually finding the y-intercept, but if you remember slope-intercept form, which we will talk about that later in this chapter, the 6 is your intercept, right? That's the intercept at 0, 6 in the equation. And then we have 2 times 1 plus 6, which gives us 8. All right, and then you graph it. Now you graph these ordered pairs and draw the line. Don't forget to draw the line. So I'm going to graph -1, 4, 0, 6, and 1, 8. Let me make that up a little bit more. Okay. My eraser wasn't working right. And then we draw this line that goes through all these points. If I can get it at the right angle here. That looks a little better. So that is our line, and you should always put arrows on both ends. I know that when you're on my lab it doesn't necessarily do that, but if you're graphing by hand, go ahead and put the arrows, because remember, a line continues on in both directions. It doesn't just stop. Without arrows, that's a line segment, and it doesn't really mean the same thing. Okay, so let's talk about choosing the x's this time. Because I have a 1/3, I want to choose x coordinates that are divisible by 3. And so I'm going to use just -3, 0, and 3. Now, of course, 0 is its own special case, but it's a good one to choose in this case because it's easy to calculate. And it's fine because when we multiply a fraction times 0, we still get 0. Okay, so this is basically saying 1/3 of -3, which that's going to be -1. -1 minus 2 is -3. And then 1/3 times 0 minus 2 will just be -2, -2. And, you know, slope-intercept form again, that -2 is our intercept, our y-intercept. And then 1/3 times 3 is 1, 1 minus 2 is -1. And then, of course, we put these on the graph. So we are at -3, -3. 0, -2, and 3, -1. Now, in my head, I'm looking at this and verifying, oh yeah, the slope is 1/3, right? Up 1 over 3, up 1 over 3. And once again, we will be talking about that soon. Yep, missed. I have to miss a few times, it seems. Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll say it's okay. All right, there we go. It is a little bit off. So that's the line, it's graphed, and that's all I needed to do. Now you do know that you can choose any values of x you want to. You could choose y's, but that would make it more complicated to actually find the other coordinate. So choosing the x's when it's already in function notation is the best way to go. All right, next. So we talked about this, the x and y intercepts, just a little bit on section 3.1. and talked about how to find them. And then this is telling you to find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0 or f of x equals 0 and solve for x. To find the y-intercept, you put in 0 for x and solve for y. Okay? And also it's a good practice to find that third checkpoint just to be on the safe side. So we may find that part of the time and we may not all of the time. We'll see. Okay? So next, we're going to find the x and y intercepts, and then also notice it says then write each equation using function notation. Okay, so that just means we solve for y and then replace the y with f of x. So to find my x-intercept, I'm going to substitute 0 for y, and I'm solving for x, right? So x equals -4. So my intercept is at -4, 0, and that's on the x-axis, right? Because the x-intercept has to be on the x-axis. My y-intercept will be when x equals 0. We're going to divide both sides by -1, so y equals a +4. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, 4. Now, we also need to solve this equation for y and write it in function notation. I'm going to do that, and then we'll choose a third point after we've written it that way. Whoops. I was going to draw that across, and I had it too high. All right, so if I take x minus y and solve it for y, then I'm going to subtract the x. And then divide everything by -1. And what by everything I mean every term in the equation. So now it is y equals 1x plus 4, right? So x plus 4. Function notation says I have to replace that y with f of x. And then you can see it would be super easy to find a third point. Now, if you find the third point after you've solved the equation and put it in function notation and it's not right, then it probably means you solved the equation incorrectly. Let's just use something easy. If I put in a 1 for x, 1 plus 4 is 5. So here's a nice checkpoint. I'll go at 1, 5. So let's go to the graph. All right, so I'm going to have a point at -4, 0, my x-intercept, 0, 4, my y-intercept, and 1, 5, my checkpoint. They line up. This is good. And then draw the line. I'm trying to kind of aim it a little bit here. I'm just going to say we're good. It's pretty good. It'll be the same for you guys if you're doing this by hand. You know, trying to get it to really be in the right place is a little tricky sometimes. A ruler's nice. I can't use a ruler on my surface, so I have to kind of just try to hit those points. Okay, here's the next one. So we're finding x and y intercepts. Now this one is kind of a special case because it doesn't have a constant term. It is just 2x equals y. And so that means that if I find the x or the y intercept, it's going to be the same thing. Because if I put 0 in for x, then y is 0. And if I put 0 in for y, then x is 0. So my intercept is at the intersection of the x and y axis at 0, 0. And I can't graph a line with just 0, 0. So I have to find some other points in order to graph. This equation is actually already solved for y, right? So it's y equals 2x. Function notation would be f of x equals 2x. So it would be easy to find some other ordered pairs. Let's do -1 and +1, right? So -1 times 2 and +1 times 2 would be 2, right? And then I can graph the equation. So I'm going to have a point at -1, -2, and at 1, +2, and draw the line. Put my arrows, and then that equation is graphed. And it's also in function notation, because remember, you're also supposed to do this on these. Okay. All right, so we're finished with this one. I'm going to stop this video and then pick up the rest of the lesson on the next video.